and welcome to episode 93 of the Comic Walker Show. This is the actual episode 93, unlike last week, which was episode 92. And for some reason, somebody was saying 93 the whole episode. You know, it's just one of those things. And we labeled it correctly on any of the platforms, and you just move on with life and laugh at yourself, especially when you have an image founder on your show, and you're like, oh shit, I don't even know the name of or the number of our episode. So anyway, I'm your host, Matt, as usual. With me as ever, Nick and Mike, and we've actually got a quote-unquote regular episode this week. No guests, no fluff. It's an indie watch kind of a week. We're going to be talking about PULP from Brubaker and Phillips. Hell yes. Anything from those guys is worth its weight in gold and always worth discussion. And Firepower #1, courtesy of Robert Kirkman and Chris Samnee. But first and foremost, for the first time in what feels like a pandemic, we've got news from Scoop Johnson.
This guy, news, yeah. This was kind of good. On the side note, thanks for bailing me out, because apparently I don't know how to look for news anymore. So thank you both.
We got your back.
All right, so we're gonna start off with some Boom news. We only find them when they're dead. #1 is a new sci-fi epic from Al Ewing, obviously.
Woo!
Right? Who doesn't know who Al Ewing is?
Titles.
Exactly. Art by
Something is killing the children.
And art by Simone DeMeo from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. The story is pretty much about a man's unrelenting quest throughout space to discover the truth, no matter where it takes him. So that's kind of a cool little subject right there. That's going to be interesting. It's going to be in stores September 2nd, 2020. So that definitely is going to be a must read, just on name alone.
I've been waiting on Al Ewing to be unleashed on an indie book for years.
Yeah.
You know, somebody's probably going to pop up at some point and inevitably tell me he's had like 24 indie books I've never heard of. But,
right.
You know, he's been Mr. Marvel for about the last 8 years. And he's such a unique writer that I have to think that anything he can do, you know, on his own terms independently is going to be worth a look.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's just, and we'll get into PULP later, you know, Ed Brubaker, we're talking about like name recognition alone. I think just when you see that name Al Ewing on a shelf, you're like, maybe, yeah, sure. Yeah, you know what? He's earned it. Spend a couple of bucks, put it in your bag, take it home, and fall in love all over again. Marvel expanding its library, and Marvel Unlimited again. Titles they're adding such as Avengers of the Wasteland #1, the Fantastic Four Annual 6, Facsimile Edition, New Mutants 6, Immortal Hulk 30, just to name a few. Head on over to the site. And we have that whole list of just a launder list of titles that Marvel is bringing. Some really good stuff.
Of course, on the other end of the Marvel spectrum, they stealth canceled some books this week.
Did they really?
They did. Ghost Rider was unceremoniously announced by its writer, Ed Brisson, as ending with issue 7, which came out a couple weeks ago. That's it. And this is after, you know, subsequent issues that had already been solicited. And then surprisingly this week, when Doctor Strange Surgeon Supreme shipped, Mark Waid had a letter in the back saying, yep, this is it. No fanfare whatsoever from Marvel. Also, in the last month, they canceled Strike Force.
Mm-hmm.
There was one other one. Now it's escaping me. Oh, I think it was Black Cat. And
I think it was Black Cat.
It's sort of weird to me because this is right after, you know, they made a big stink out of taking the books that they'd relegated to being digital only and saying, oh no, we're going to bring them back to print. So I don't know what the plan is here. It kind of smacks as no plan.
Yeah. Well, and maybe, and the thing is, maybe Marvel doesn't know what the plan is. You know, I'm not trying to, you know, throw shade or whatever the kids are calling it nowadays, but it's like, do they, I mean, really, do they know? I mean, they got, Empire's going on. There's like 40 books that tie into this event. I mean, but I don't know. There's Marvel has a lot going on right now, and I don't think that Marvel really knows their concrete direction.
I think there's truth to that, and if nothing else, it's a reflection of where we are in the industry coming out of the pandemic pause.
Sure.
There's pretty much mass chaos at DC right now too, although it's a little more behind the scenes, somewhat, than it is actually affecting the books that are coming out. But this type of thing I think is going to become the norm for a while until everything settles and we know better what the post-Rona world looks like, which who knows when that'll be. So
absolutely.
Get ready for more upheaval like this. I mean, it sucks because, these books had their fans. I wasn't reading Doctor Strange, but Ghost Rider was probably the best Ghost Rider I've read in 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
It definitely shouldn't have ended by now. Like, there's the way the story was going, it was definitely not like set to end.
Like, this was the setup arc.
Yeah.
There were many, many more stories that were supposed to come of this. But I guess
like my last review was saying, like, I hope that it succeeds on the setup and that it's just gonna stay at that, I guess.
And thank you for jinxing the title for everybody else.
Yes, all mixed
up.
How dare you want a comic to go past 7 issues? But who knows? I mean, maybe when it's all said and done and, it's back to, normal, maybe some of these books will come back, even as a limited series or something like that. And we'll see, some stable wheels. But, moving on in the world of Marvel, sticking with Marvel, Iron Man, speaking of making a comeback, is coming back. Christopher Cantwell, which I'm kind of excited for because he does the Doctor Doom, which is kind of cool because I am really stoked on that series. Doctor Doom is awesome. And he is teaming up with artist Keifu and Iron Man 1, which is scheduled for September 16th. New armored suit, new wraparound cover from Alex Ross. Praise be. Basically, that is going. Cantwell says he plans on exploring questions of Iron Man's role on today's purpose and today's society, and kind of where Stark would go with some of his ideas and his plans and stuff like that. So it looks good. It does sound pretty interesting. Full write-up, full press on the website, of course. Obviously.
And if I can, I actually got a chance to speak with Cantwell about the Mask book.
Oh, nice.
And that was the I Pledge Allegiance to the Mask.
Mm-hmm.
It was very interesting to see Cantwell's perspective on society and approach to storytelling in relation to current events. The Mask was really inspired by political events, and it's interesting to see that they're going to be trying to tie in Tony Stark into more real world situations. Uh-huh. And what a choice for this one. It actually got me excited to read an Iron Man book, which is not something that I've ever thought I've spoken aloud before.
Yeah, Dan Slott's run I think has been I don't know, just like kind of a grab bag of ideas that haven't really coalesced beyond the idea of VR and hey, it's 2020, we should do something with Iron Man 2020. Mm-hmm. It just, I don't know. Apparently somebody likes it because they popped off all kinds of Iron Man 2020 tie-ins.
Yeah.
But didn't work for me. So I'm excited to see some back to basics Tony Stark.
Yeah, and honestly, excuse me, just to kind of chime in on the back to basics, I think that's what Marvel, I think, needs to do with a lot of their stuff is just not worry too much about the tie-ins, not worry too much about, giving Doctor Strange, who I love, and obviously this is just an exaggeration, but 6 titles. Doctor Strange doesn't need 6 titles. Iron Man doesn't need 5 titles. You just kind of get it back to the basics, telling the good stories, and really just producing the books that made you marvel, you know what I'm saying? And really kind of I don't know, just kind of just start pounding the ground with just those good stories that just made you who you are instead of just all this crazy. It's just crazy. It's madness what's going on right now at Marvel that I don't know what they're doing. But so, and to close it off with our Marvel news, let's talk about Empire 4 and they're in Marvel's way of releasing Empire 4.
Surely you don't mean the spoiler heard round the world.
They sent two press releases for that.
So they're earth-shattering, as we reported it, they're earth-shattering Empire. Like I said, my shop, when you walk into my main LCS, there's a whole wall of shelves, obviously, but there is just like every Marvel book has the Empire stamp on it, right? Because there's tie-ins upon tie-ins, and the tie-ins have tie-ins, and those tie-ins have tie-ins, and it's all Empire. And then Empire 4 releases, and you're like, oh, great, super. Wait a second, I got home, and I'm checking Twitter. Oh, look, there's the book. There's what's happening in Empire 4. Sweet. It's neat. But Matt, sir, you were saying?
Well, I don't know. I just think it's Marvel is kind of ridiculous, and they're really good at shooting themselves in the foot with spoiling their own big twist because they want press. I seem to recall that many moons ago, Joe Quesada spoiled Captain America's death right after Civil War, like the day before Cap 25 came out.
Yep.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And I mean, it was solely for the sole purpose of whipping up a media frenzy around it. So, and I mean, you know what? If you don't know what it is we're talking about because you're spoiler averse, sorry, we're going to spoil it because, Marvel already did. But Hulkling and Wiccan got married, and that's awesome. Like, hell yes. More of that, more representation, more normalization of things of that nature.
For sure.
And I mean, again, good on Marvel for doing this, but bad on Marvel for spoiling the damn thing twice over with their own press releases.
They did it in classic Marvel fashion.
That was the time that Wolverine had a shotgun marriage to Viper, and and they're like, the whole comics world went bluey, and it was just nuts. And the 90s were a crazy time.
Wow, that's good stuff. You can't make it up. You
can't make it up.
You just can't make it up. All right, moving on, kids. We'll cut this short a little bit here. Moving on to DC really quick. We got the Dead Planet 3 first look on the website. Check that out. Kids love their zombies, and DC got pretty cool at telling a zombie tale, at least for Dead Planet. So check that out as well. And also, Gen 13 is coming back.
Speaking of 90s.
Right. They are Bugable jeans I am wearing. Thank you for asking. So basically what it is, Gen 13 is coming in 2021, and they plan to re-release Gen 13 Starting Over, which is I think
it's a trade of the first arc, actually.
Right. It's a collection of the roughly the first 2 years of J. Scott Campbell, Jim Lee, and Brandon Choi. A couple of guys who are still trying to find their way in the comics world. Good on them for trying to finally getting some work and getting their name out there. You know what? Keep at it, guys. And one day, those guys are going to do something. We'll hear something about that.
It is kind of cool, though, because it's been almost 2 decades since Gen 13 was in print at all. And, there's a lot of Wildstorm diehards out there. I know we've got a few amongst us here at Comic Watch, and damn it if, Gen 13, just by existing and being back in print, doesn't bring back the warm and fuzzies.
It's awesome. Awesome. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that can only lead to, like, cooler stuff like grifter stories and stuff like that. So we'll eagerly wait for those.
Indeed.
Indeed. So we're going to wrap up news with everyone's favorite company, Valiant, and the big, huge, settle down, Nick, settle down, buddy.
Hey, this ain't Valiant Watch.
I know, right? Yeah. Go next door. No.
Follow us at Valiant Watch.
so Valiant closed their New York offices, and the whole interwebs has been a buzz. And if you pay attention to internet rumors, they'll have you think that Valiant's going under, and Acclaim came back and took over, and it's horrible. But anyway, so just to kind of speed things along, we do have a statement from Valiant. They're just pretty much saying that because of the pandemic, everyone's teleworking, and that's what they're summing this up to. So go on the website. We got the official statement there, and like I said, I even once we ran with the story, I started digging around, and there's really nothing. There's no meat to any of the rumors and any of the trolls out there that are saying that Valiant's going under. I don't see it. I would be super shocked, just with the amount of stories and writers and just stuff that they have pretty much clawed their way back to being a prominent company with really good stories now. Except for some stuff, back in the day, way back in the day, Turok the dinosaur, most of their stuff is, pretty solid. But, that's take it for what you will. Valiant's closing their New York offices. Everyone's teleworking. I've been teleworking since like February, so I still have a job. I don't work for Valiant, but, still. But, gentlemen, that is the news. Unless you guys got some add-ons, some once-overs, some
just real quick, breaking today, Captain Marvel 2 has a new director. The directors of the first film are out for some reason or another, and director Nia DiCarlo, who directed the recent Candyman remake, is in, for whatever it's worth. So, that's all I got. Nick, any addendums?
I don't think so. That's pretty much it. I think we just got word during the show that Empire 4 is getting a second printing with a new cover, if you're into that sort of thing. Following up on the ton of press that Marvel has done, looks like that they're selling that book. So, cool stuff.
Makes sense.
Good for them.
All right, well, gentlemen, let's roll with our indie watch for the week. First and foremost, we're talking about last week's hardcover OGN from Image, Pulp by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. It tells the story of Max Winter, an older gentleman living in 1939 New York with who's barely eking by, writing pulp fiction stories about a Western outlaw who, incidentally, he used to be as a young man. When he gets word that the Nazi Bund are active in New York, he is compelled to act. And that is kind of the gist of it. So this was not the first, this is the second original graphic novel collaboration for the sainted duo of Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips. Of course, the first was All My Heroes Are Junkies, which was won an Eisner, and it's fantastic stuff. These guys have a heck of a reputation in the industry. They're one of the few that can sell a book based on names alone. So guys, let's roll. What did you all think of Pulp?
I mean, I loved it. I am not vocally the biggest fan of Brubaker and Phillips together. The genres that they play in tend to not be or have a lot of overlap, I guess. But this one I was very here for. I love the Western vibe. The pulp mag feel that it had was really great. They captured a lot of those different aspects, and the character was someone you should root for, but the world just kind of feels bleak. And I really liked that Max Winter kind of excelled in this. The way they tied in the old Western vibe with the New York 1930s vibe worked really well, I thought. And you can tell this team has just that dynamic down for the creation process where everything they do clicks. There's not a lot of books out there doing what this is doing. And it was great for me to finally dive into this book and be like, this is what everybody's talking about with this team. And like, I finally understand, what's going on with this chemistry and why all of their work is doing so well and connecting with such a large audience. And it's just cool stuff. I mean, it's a little violent. Like, it's not what I thought. I didn't expect when you pick this book up that you're going to see like this 1930s older man taking on Nazis. That kind of caught me off guard, but I think the pacing worked well. And I know the length had a lot of people talking online and that it was a really quick read, but I thought it worked well in establishing Max as a character at the beginning. And then it really moved quickly because there wasn't a lot of ground to cover at such a later age for him. I mean, we're picking up as he's recounting the times he's almost died. So you really get the feeling like the clock is ticking. And I think that pacing worked really well as it started to accelerate towards the end. And I definitely didn't want it to end, but on those last few pages, you're almost cheering. And it was good stuff. I loved it.
Awesome. Mike, what about you?
Yeah. Anytime you see, Ed Brubaker, you kind of, as I said earlier, he just on name recognition alone, even if you don't like the book, he's earned that ability for you to just kind of pick it up. You know what I'm saying? But Pulp itself, and that's exactly what I did with this book. Pulp, with the pulp westerns and stuff, the subject itself is definitely not my wheelhouse, my genre. But I think when you got Phillips and Brubaker, you pick it up and you kind of dive into it because you're kind of going to be on a ride for something special. And that's exactly what this is. I mean, the smooth transition that you get with Max from the Western, that old Western, and now I want to say, to his modern era, to where he's coming from an era where, kind of like the good guys always win type deal. And now he's like, well, fascism fascism is on the rise. Bad guys are kind of winning. And he's not really sure how to handle the current world. That transition was brilliant, I thought, in this book, because it was such a smooth. They're like, wait a second, did we just transition? He was a cowboy guy. He was in the Old West, and now he's with his girlfriend. I can't remember. I think they weren't married. I don't believe they were married, and he's trying to kind of. I know he had a past and he had kids, but I can't. Forgive me, I cannot remember her name.
Rosa.
Rosa, thank you.
I think he was just in love with Rosa. I'm not sure if they were married.
I think it was just a normal I don't say normal relationship, but like a boyfriend girlfriend living with each other relationship, if you will. And so you transition to that, and now he's kind of like in that position where it's like, what would you do? I mean, he's seeing the worst of humanity. He's seeing the worst of humanity kind of unfold before him. And now he has the opportunity to take one of the, I want to say maybe one of the worst, rallies that took place on American soil, and rob them and rob Nazis. Who doesn't want to rob Nazis? Anytime you have the chance to rob Nazis, you should rob Nazis. That is not endorsed by comicwatch.com. Anyway, but I think that part was really good, and it plays on Max. You get a super great feel of Max's character, and that he really just wants to correct the rest of his life. He doesn't necessarily think he'd lived the wrong life, but he just wants to correct it and maybe have a smoother road to travel down through his years. And I just thought they delivered it in a way that had me surprised. Like I said, this is definitely not my genre. I do dabble in the noir a little bit, but the pulp westerns and stuff like that definitely had me kind of like, wow, this is really good. But then again, to me, Phillips and Brubaker, I think if like Jordan and Kobe, rest in peace, got together and wrote comics, I think that would kind of be there. My man, I think that would be a very comparable, kind of team. Like definitely Brubaker and Phillips. Even if you don't like it, Brubaker and Phillips, pick it up. It's definitely a very good read and something that deserves to be on your shelf for sure, because it's really awesome.
Yeah. And if I can, it's meta in a way that you didn't really think. It's called pulp, and you kind of think you understand what that's doing when in reference to the pulp magazines, but it's also a bit of a meta take on being a creative and seeing Brubaker take on the life of a comic writer with Max. And I feel like there's a lot of interesting parallels maybe to the comics creation process and kind of what this medium allows. And I thought it was really cool to see just the play on what a pulp story is. It's super sensational. There's, like I said, it's really violent. There's Nazis and robbing, and the good guy is kind of good, but by the end of it, I don't want to spoil too much, but the twist of the end of it is what is good, and that portrayal of it. So I think that all tied into this meta view of this exploration of pulp as a history of storytelling.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I guess for me, I mean, I kind of just want to just say, throughout comics history, you've got certain writer-artist duos that just click flawlessly. They continue to challenge each other. They continue to bring out the best in one another. Lee and Kirby, O'Neill and Adams, Claremont and Byrne. Brubaker and Phillips deserve to be in that conversation. They have together created just an incomparable body of work since they started working together way back on Sleeper in the early 2000s. And Pulp follows right in there. Most of what they've done is crime fiction to one degree or another. Sometimes it's got a Lovecraftian vibe to it with Fatale. Sometimes it's 40s crime noir tinged. Sometimes there's an element of the supernatural, as in Kill or Be Killed. But what continues to impress me is that every time Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips put something out, it's not you should read it, but rather you have to read it. And even though in my estimation, Pulp doesn't even quite crack the top 5 of their collaborations, it's still better than 95% of comics being published today. Like there's just nothing else like a new Brubaker and Phillips book. There just isn't. And I'm sorry if that sounds a little hyperbolic or fanboyish, but I got to speak my truth. So that's that. So this book itself, man, absolutely fantastic. I mean, here they are on the top of their game again. Like you guys said, they're playing with some genres they haven't played with before. A little bit of pulp western, rainy, kind of just, still in the Depression era New York. I think what I actually liked most about this story-wise was the dichotomy between the Old West and Depression era New York City, both happening on either end of one man's life. Like that's the type of thing this happened and then this happened in history class, right? But think about if you were born in 1872 and an old man in 1939. Think about the just astounding technological and social changes that took place in that span of time. That's incredible. And Pulp does such a wonderful job of really zeroing in on Max Winters and his feeling of being an anachronism and living in a world that's not really his anymore. Excuse me. And that, I think, right there is what makes Pulp the unique read that it is. Like the Nazis, yes, let's steal from Nazis. Let's punch Nazis. Let's, whatever bad we can do to Nazis, let's do it. That just kind of goes without saying. But for me, Pulp works as well as it does because of the examination of just two very different eras bookending one man's life. My only real negative, I think, is that it feels a little short. I think I read it in around 30 minutes, which I guess in that regard it does share something in common with Pulp Fiction, which was designed to be read quickly and, was kind of disposable in its way at the time. So I don't know if that was a deliberate choice or not, but I personally would have liked to have seen the story expanded upon a little bit in some way, shape, or form. I mean, it is what it is. You should totally buy this thing. $16.99 is a very paltry price to ask for this beautiful work of art. Speaking of art, Phillips, my God, the man's just a beast. Like, did you guys notice just how, like, the difference between the Old West scenes and the 1939 scenes in terms of coloration and just pencil style? Like, they really, really contrast one another very, very well. I didn't look, but I don't think Betty Brightweiser colored this, did she? No, Jacob Phillips did. Excuse me. Yeah. Jacob Phillips, who's incidentally killing it on That Texas Blood right now, which is another comic you should totally check out. Jacob Phillips, Sean's son, colored the hell out of it. Took some really interesting choices and made some bold decisions that just gave it a really unique book. I will not be shocked if this is up for an Eisner next year.
Yeah, I wouldn't be either. I mean, one question: do we know who lettered it? Does Sean Phillips do the lettering?
Letters his own stuff.
Oh, that's cool because it was really great. I like the play between kind of like a novel style, like torn from a page when it was going through the old history and kind of help with the dialogue. It worked really well.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think to add real quick to Matt's when he was talking about the art, and I think that aided in that smooth transition from that Old West to Max's, his version of the modern times and stuff. And the way Sean just kind of switched everything. It was just like a switch, and that just played beautifully to what Ed was doing with the story and moved it along quite masterfully.
Totally. Definitely. So, yeah, Pulp, Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips. Any final thoughts, guys?
Buy it. I wish I could find a copy.
You should most definitely buy it. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah, I heard it sold out on Amazon like that.
Really? I believe it. I've
seen people complaining that their shop didn't get it in or that they didn't get enough in mainly. Yep, that was me too. So it's a harder one to find, but it seems like word of mouth is carrying this one really far. So you'll see people talking about it for a little while.
Oh, absolutely.
As it should. It's deserved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, absolutely. So that's Pulp from Image. Check it out. So now our second Indie Watch book of the week, Firepower, number 1 and 2, courtesy of Image, written by that zombie guy, Robert Kirkman, and art by that Captain America and Daredevil guy, Chris Samnee. So, Firepower tells the story of Owen Johnson, who ventured 15 years ago, ventured to the Far East to find out the origins of his birth parents. He discovered a mystical kung fu village, and lots of cool kung fu things happen. So that was all in the Prelude OGN that shipped a few weeks ago. Now we pick up in numbers 1 and 2. It's modern day. He's settled down in suburbia. He's got the wife. He's got the kids. But of course, the past comes knocking. So, Firepower. Guys, Mike, how about you go first this time?
Yeah. This is exactly like my analogies that I've used before on the show, where use the hamburger analogy, right? Anyone can cook a hamburger. It just depends on how you season it to make it good, make it kind of elevated, right? And that's what Kirkman does with this story. I think of Owen Johnson, like, you take Owen and kind of like the guy whose past has come back. He's in suburbia. He doesn't want his past. He doesn't want his powers, and he's just trying to live. We've seen it. We've read it. But the way Kirkman goes about Firepower elevates this sort of story. Even if you didn't read the Prelude, I think you can still jump in. I think you can still grab onto it. And the story is just great because it's like it takes this guy who just wants to live, but his past just won't let him live on his current track. Like you can't, Owen can't just sit here and, become someone different. And I think that shines through the way Robert tells a story. And I think it just really picks up, especially I enjoyed the fact that, and we kind of talked about this in, in chat and stuff, but kind of like the timeline jump from the prelude. If you didn't read the prelude, I don't think it's necessary, but it may help a little bit to kind of give a little more, better backstory to Owen. But I think Kirkman really shined where he took the timeline, jumped ahead, but didn't jump the shark and didn't try to recreate something, and just really stayed true to it, And I think bringing, because I cannot, I want to get his name right, Ma Guang, bringing him back and really kind of making him where he was, pardon my French, he was like the ass, if you will, in the prelude, right? He's that guy when you're
that guy.
Like, yeah, he's like that guy, and you're like, really, dude? Can you just cut my guy some slack?
Can you not be a dick, please?
Right. Like my dude just climbed a mountain right now. Like, give him a break. And so Mao comes back. He's like, hey, Ling was murdered. Stuff is happening. We need you to come back. And, the story unfolds. I don't want to give too much away because, the book is still relatively new, and I hate spoilers. But what I think Robert Kirkman does in a story is just fabulous in this. And I think this is one of his best efforts right now. I think we're going to see something really special going forward from Firepower. And what I really loved, probably I don't want to say more so than the storytelling, was just the art and the panels, the fight scenes, especially I think it was probably halfway through one where they're fighting silently and the whole house is sleeping, and just those paintings.
Yeah, that's right at the start of 2. Yeah.
Okay, so in 2, they're fighting silent in just these panels, and you feel that, like, you're in the room and you're going like, this, pardon my French, but this shit is real. Like, it just lit off, and you're just like, and you just find yourself going back, not so much for the story, although Robert, friend of the show, ask Eric Larson if you want to come on and talk about Firefly. But no, you find yourself going back and just for the art and just for those panels, because it's like, God, why can't all the other books with fight scenes do this? Like, this is how it's done, and this is what makes this book really good. On a quick note to kind of wrap up, I was reading some reviews about it before we hopped on, and I found like a super negative review about it, which I didn't understand, and it was just really odd, because it was like he was like picking apart, like, Owen's wife and how she looked really young, and then like the cop who was teaching the daughter about the what was it, the trick,
how to get away with murder.
And the way this reviewer was picking apart negatives, I'm sitting here going like, and to each his own. I mean, review how you review, and like what you like by all means. But I was just like, God, that might be a bit much, because this book I felt was really, really good.
We're all reviewers here.
Yeah, sure.
And I'll just say, if you have to find little crap like that to pick a book apart about, that doesn't impact the story. Yeah. And you're looking for an excuse to dump on a book.
Yeah, and kind of that's what it was, because everything else that I've read about this is spot on to what what I'm saying about it, and I'm sure what you guys are going to say about it, what we talked about. This is a really good book. I mean, from the prelude, from issue 1 through issue 2, I think this is going to be something that is going to be another hit. I just don't see it not being a hit. It just has all that elements. It's almost that perfect recipe for a comic. Good art, good writing, good jokes, especially in the prelude that leads into 1 and 2. 1 and 2 has a couple quips in it that's really good. But yeah, the recipe's there, man. Firepower. I don't. Is it perfect? No, but not too much. Too much else is. But it's good. I enjoyed it. What'd you guys think, Nick?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this story because I'm a fan of Kirkman's. Like, The Walking Dead still breaks my heart just thinking about how it ended. And unfortunately, I think another series may have slipped in before the release of Firepower that I'll talk about on what I'm reading, what I'm looking forward to. But here's the thing. Firepower can be a problematic series. Is it really the best time for a man out of culture trope where a white man goes to an Asian temple to learn Kung Fu?
He's not white, dude.
Yeah, Owen?
No, he's not. I thought that too.
Yeah.
And then like midway through the prelude, something is said about his Asian parents. But that's a coloring problem because I'm reading that prelude and I was thinking the exact same thing. It's like white savior trope. That's not okay right now.
That's what I thought that going into the series, like picking in you start to read it, but the way they deal with a sense of cultural assimilation, I think, is what made the series work in a way that I really didn't expect. And that you get a lot of fashion, music, you get a lot of these different cultural elements that come in and help to blend this. And I think when you pick up 15 years later, it really helps to nail that concept of, we're doing this kind of a broad story and that it is a cross-cultural examination. So I think that was something that was interesting, but I can see how people would think it might be problematic. The cop issue was an odd panel, I thought, for sure, but outside of those instances, I mean, it's really one of my favorite books already right now to read. Like, I'm already excited for issue 3. There's so much content that Kirkman's so smart in telling the story like this. Kirkman has a unique way of working the comics industry and understanding, how to get certain stories across in ways that I really don't expect from the medium. So right now, with the amount of content that we're at, if you compare this to like The Walking Dead, I mean, Shane's already dead. We're probably getting to the point where Carl's getting shot in the woods looking at the deer. This is a pretty far way into the story that you're able to just sink your teeth into right off the bat. And what creators would really get that type of leeway? There's not many out there who can put out 100 pages of a book pretty quickly before determining if it's even a success. I can understand how the book moves in certain ways because of that. He's bought himself time to flesh things out in ways where the prelude, nobody's going to get that chance with a prelude like that. And it worked really well to set up, because when you dive into these two, he released issues 1 and 2 at the same time. I think that's all, again, part of what he's doing and trying to convey this story, because you really need to get to issue 2 to kind of feel like you're at a point where you can say, yes, like this is something I'm going to keep buying and I'm going to actually keep up with, because these are characters that I care about. There's a lot of world building that happens. And if you jump into just this issue 1, I don't know if it's really a successful issue number 1. If somebody in 2 or 3 years is going to go back and pick this book up, can you really jump into the story successfully with just issue number 1? That's something I'm interested to see, somebody else's opinion on that maybe has gone through that. But it's crazy well scripted, well plotted, but Samnee really steals the show with the art. And I think that's what most people are going to end up talking about, is Kirkman's telling a cool story, but it's Samnee's art that's making this work. I mean, a ninja comic that it's straight martial arts at this point, and it's easier to do that in film, but how do you pull that off in a consistent way that's enjoyable in comics? And yeah, that the fight scene in issue 2 where they're super quiet, it's so tense. You feel like you're going to wake them up if you turn the pages too loudly or something like that. Like, it was really cool. I think there's a panel, if I could try to get it, where he's trying not to, no spoiler alert, but he's trying not to wake up his wife. And he's like, it was like the bit of humor that you see in some Kung Fu movies, where it might have been a blooper or something like that, but they left it in. And it's just the level of nuance in it, I think, makes it a lot of fun and helps it to stand out as something other than, a guy who throws fireballs. Because, they had a chance to really fall back on some cliche stuff there. And it really stands out above that as something that I think, I'm not willing to say it's like the next Walking Dead yet, but it's something that I'm definitely going to stick around for a while.
So, to say what you're saying about cliches, like as I was reading the prelude, like that was, the first 30 pages of this, I'm like, man, this is all just tropes and cliches. I mean, it's well done, but tropes and cliches. And then by the time I get to the end of that OGN, and by the way, if you have not picked up the prelude graphic novel, you really should, because it is fantastically well executed. And I just kept getting, as I'm reading it though, I just keep getting sucked further and further into this world. And it dawned on me, it's the execution. It doesn't matter that we've seen so many of these story beats and archetypical characters so many times before, right? Because the damn thing is just so well done. And so much of that credit has to go to Chris Samnee, like you were saying, who draws action sequences and choreographs them like few other artists I've ever seen. Yeah. Very few. I mean, man, you really feel like you're watching a movie when you're reading these fight scenes. They're just damn well done. Yeah, absolutely. And that got me thinking, like, I think that's the key to a good Robert Kirkman book, is he takes things you've seen 100 times before, but he finds a way to execute them in a manner that's just utterly compelling. And of course, Walking Dead, Invincible, those are the two that absolutely come to mind.
We just heard that with Valentino, right?
Yeah.
Like the last episode when he was like, zombie books aren't selling. What is this?
His books that haven't connected with me. And I mean, granted, there's a lot of stuff from the aughts of his that I haven't read, and I haven't read most of Invincible. So in fairness and transparency, but his more recent stuff, Outcast and Oblivion Song, just didn't really connect with me for one reason or another. And I think it's because with both of those books, or at least with Oblivion Song, he's trying to do something wholly unique. And it just kind of starts to meander after a while. But then with Outcast, in rare instances of him trying to do a possession story, and for whatever reason, it just doesn't live up to itself. And, it happens. Nobody hits a home run every time. It's fine. But Firepower gets Kirkman back to doing what he does best, which is just taking what you are familiar with and rendering and executing the hell out of it. And he's great at finding the right partners. Walking Dead wouldn't be Walking Dead without Charlie Adler, right? And Firepower wouldn't be Firepower without Chris Samnee's ability to convey both humanity in his characters, but also those just astounding fight scenes. Like, we haven't seen a script or anything from any of these comics, but I can't imagine that, Kirkman was blocking these action scenes out. I mean, it's probably more along the lines of Owen kicks, ninja jumps, that sort of thing. And that's up to, Samnee to interpret that on page and make it work. My God, what a talent. Honestly, it's been so long since I read his Daredevil run with Mark Waid. I'd kind of forgotten how good he is, which shame on me. But I mean, there's definitely some points in there where maybe he skipped a little bit, or maybe the coloring was off. Like we were saying, neither one of us realized that Owen is not white.
If you don't pick up on the dialogue on it, then you could read this whole story with thinking that Owen's a white dude.
Yeah,
you really could. And I think that's an issue. But like I said, it does well enough with the notion of its cross-cultural examination and time in both, all of these different aspects, that I think it works well. But maybe do better.
Again, I don't know. I think it was more of a coloring flub than anything else. I mean, it's not like it's not as egregious as that issue of was it Marauders a few months back, where was it Bishop or Storm? Yeah, Storm. Storm
Storm's
was
been making the
basically
rounds.
colored as a very tan white person. Like, it's
Yeah.
not that egregious, but you do have an issue on the coloring side when 2 out of 3 readers didn't realize the main character is supposed to be Asian. And part of that, too, is a little bit of rendering flub on Samnee's part. Like, just saying.
I mean, yeah, I mean, kind of. If we're going to go to that point and kind of look at this character, Owen, as a representation, then, yeah, there are minor issues, I think. It's not enough to make me stop reading the book.
No, nothing like that.
And that's where I was worried that it would be. I really was, because like when the book was announced, I was like, "Oh, this is what we're doing."
Well, the book was announced, and my response was just, eh. Yeah,
it felt like we had seen it all.
Much was going to happen, was going to come from it at all.
Yeah.
And I'm so pleasantly surprised, and I am absolutely adding it to my pull sheet, and I cannot wait until issue 3. So, Firepower, please check it out because it's freaking awesome. Guys, any last thoughts? We're running up on the hour here, and we still got another quick segment to get through. But
just real quick, this is kind of why I like to read comics. This was such a great show just to line up Firepower and Pulp together.
Oh yeah.
After talking about the mess of Empire at the News and then diving right into these, it's good stuff, and like I love it.
Look.
Yeah, it reiterates why comics are fun and why you should read them.
Yeah.
And, this show, I mean, with Pulp and Firepower, 2 prime examples of indie books. Maybe some titles that could be overlooked. Maybe people that aren't Walking Dead fans, shut off Kirkman for whatever reason, or maybe they're not just Brubaker fans, or for whatever. But definitely 2 books, indie books, out of the big 2, but definitely worth your time, worth picking up. And like I said, comics are fun, and this is 2 great examples of why they are fun.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. And again, like you were saying, Mike, the fact that both are our choices this week, and they were kind of shoe-in choices. Like we didn't really deliberate much about this. We're both non-big 2 books. I think says a lot about the health of the creative side of the industry, non-big 2 side now. So, we'll always still show love for Marvel and DC when they've earned our love. But
for sure.
Ooh.
Hey, that is harsh and a little cynical, but what I meant by that is, there's plenty of good stuff out there.
Yeah.
Plenty.
Yes.
I mean, and both of these books are Image. It's not like it's hard to find an Image comic. Okay.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, peace be with you. With that, that's our 2 books for the week. Firepower number 1 and 2. Pulp for hardcover, both from Image. Check them out, please. Moving right along, 3rd and final segment. And God, it's been forever since we've done this. I almost forgot how to do it. But what have you been reading? What are you looking forward to? Nick, go for it.
I really want to just talk about Join the Future some more. I am in love with that series, and we did a whole show on it with Kaplan over at Aftershock. And this is the book where I mentioned like one book slid in and replaced The Walking Dead for me, and I thought maybe Firepower would be it, but it's 100% Join the Future. That book it gives me such Walking Dead vibes just because of the character drama in it. Mm-hmm. There's this huge concept of it that, is kind of familiar with tech overruling a traditional lifestyle. But the character work with Clementine Libby, like this very like traditional Southern girl almost, heartfelt, strong, can't get her down, always gonna like fight for herself. And you get this sense of such a believable and relatable world that, I mean, within 3 issues, these are some of my favorite characters in comics right now. And I can't get enough of it, really. It gives me that vibe where like, there's something shocking just behind every page and you're kind of worried to turn it. and you never know if you're going to get that like, oh shit moment that Walking Dead was like really good at delivering. And I think Join the Future has the potential to lay the groundwork for characters that can deliver that same type of tension and not get, I guess, confused in its own world building. And I think issue 4 is coming out in a couple of weeks now. I think it's 2 weeks away. And we're kind of hitting the point where there's an apex in the story, and there's a bit of a turning point in the collision of old school and very much a new school way of thinking. And the story doesn't get too deep into that. It uses the characters to analyze it. And I think that's what The Walking Dead always did so well, in using characters to analyze human drama and those emotions. And that's exactly what I get out of this. It's such strong writing, and the artwork, Kowalski, I think it's Piotr. I may be pronouncing that wrong. I'm so sorry. The artwork is just insane. And it's kind of like what I would want out of a Walking Dead book if it's colored, which we're getting soon. So that's a comparison I won't be able to use. But it's that type of book that, like, sticking with the theme of this whole episode is why I read comics. Like, this is, I get to the reading pile to get to books like this, and Join the Future is within just a few issues kind of giving me that heartfelt feeling that I've been missing since Walking Dead ended.
Well, I'll say what intrigues me, and I mean, again, I don't want to take up too much of a sidebar with this, but what intrigues me about the way that Join the Future sets its world up is that it's asking the question of, is progress necessarily a good thing?
Yeah.
But it does, and that's a very conservative theme, which, that's not typically something that's going to resonate with any of us, but it's done in such a way that it's not ham-fisted or anything like that. Like, there's some genuine philosophical debates going on.
Yeah,
I mean, there are, and so far, Kaplan has done a really good job of saying, there really are good benefits to living in the city and in joining the future, if you will. So there's a whole lot of just interesting comparisons and dichotomies and philosophical arrangement, or philosophical questions happening. And damn it, just pick up this book, okay?
Right? Yeah, I can't agree more. And I guess being stuck out in East Texas like I am, it really hits home a lot in what these themes are handling. And Clem is just a character I want to see 200 issues of, and I want to see eventually her with a hand missing, saying,
sorry, but she's going to get shot in issue 191.
No, I don't need this. I don't need this in my life.
So, Nick, what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, right. But I think this book has every bit of potential of a series like that, and something that, can really bring tears to your eyes or make you celebrate. It's just really, really good stuff. I guess what I'm looking forward to, I could keep it image related. I think Big Girls is coming out by Jason Howard, and it looks like a pretty cool like sci-fi story that I think is gonna have a lot of people talking. That we might even be presenting it for the show, because I've seen some hype on it. I'm always down to get with that, and it's been making the rounds on Twitter of people really excited for this, seeing a lot of creator buzz for it. So I'm definitely gonna snag a copy of that if I can.
You never even heard about this one.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. We've gotten some We've gotten some artwork previews of it, and it's kind of a literal interpretation, just huge mega girls. So it's kind of like a sci-fi story, almost like a kaiju vibe, But it looks really, really fun, and another testament to what Image is doing. We've been talking about Image a lot lately on the show, so I could continue that theme and really stick with their catalog. There's always something that I could read from them. I think McFarlane's been promoting the new Spawn issue. That's got me so excited. Right before the show, I saw the preview image of a Gunslinger Spawn is going to be like full blown in issue 309. He's on the cover. McFarlane's got this badass Gunslinger Spawn cover, and I'm so ready for that one. So ready.
All right. Well, Mike, how about you, buddy?
Well, I don't know if I can follow up with Gunslinger Spawn, which I'm super excited for. And we should all just have a banner that says "Join the Future" in the back, because that is, a prime example of execution done right. Yeah. By the way, that's just remarkable. So keeping up with the Image, apparently we're advertising for Image here. What I've been reading, obviously, Mercy. or the goriest, just craziest issue yet, and probably easily one of the best books I've read this year.
Very cool.
Bliss by Sean Lewis and Caitlin Yarsky on art.
What is Bliss about? Because I don't know anything about it.
I picked it up just from following Caitlin Yarsky on Twitter. She was posting, up until the release, she was posting art for the book. And I found out that Sean Lewis was writing, so I followed him on Twitter. And just hearing, obviously, their buzz from their passing around. So basically, Bliss, without spoiling too much, is kind of like a drug, if you will. And the ability to do whatever you want without repercussions if you take Bliss. Right. So you want to maim somebody, you want to kill somebody, you just want to just beat on them. If you take Bliss, you're fine, because it's going to kind of, I don't want to say absolve you, but you're going to kind of be, maybe absolve is the word, from any type of punishment, right? So with issue 1, it poses the question with this guy is in the hospital with his wife. His kid is really, really sick. And he comes in contact with these underworld lords who kind of control the city. And they introduce him to Bliss. And the art is just like, Caitlin Yarsky is on a completely different plane with her art, and how the meat she just kind of sets with Sean Lewis's writing. It's almost like, I don't think this book could exist without each other, because they're just such a perfect combination of just artistry, It's really, really good. I can't speak enough about it. I almost feel like a stalker, because every time someone tweets something about Bliss or something like that, I'm retweeting it, and I'm always saying something about the book. But the book is really, really good. I love that part of humanity that we always talk about. Who doesn't talk about wanting to maybe kind of best your adversary, or maybe getting back at that bully or something like that? Like, what would you do if you had that ability to kind of get back at someone? I'm not saying you got to kill him, but maybe you could like break their leg and send him in the hospital for a couple weeks or something, right? Call me fat again. I'll whatever. But yeah, Bliss is really good. And
what you looking forward to, buddy?
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah, looking forward to probably Adventure Man 3.
Oh yes,
I still need to read
underrated book.
More Image. I'm so tired, but not tired of talking about Image.
Oh God, such bores.
Matt, I gotta hand it to you for that recommendation of Adventure Man, because whoo-wee.
Man, I'll tell you what. Fraction on point. The Dodsons, best art I've seen from them in years.
It is amazing.
And that's not saying they've been slacking, but Adventure Man is outstanding stuff. Yeah. So for me, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, shut up. No. Me, I've been actually having a blast diving into some old school Young Justice by Peter David and Todd Nook, or Nuck, however you pronounce his last name. Please forgive me, internet. This is a really silly title, and deliberately so. Super hella fun. It's the kind of comic where Peter David invents a villain named Harm for the express purpose of having a running gag of people saying to get out of his way. It's great. I can't resist it. So I've been having a ton of fun with that. What am I looking forward to though? So we've got 2 big ones next week. We've got Dark Knight's Death Metal #3 coming out. We're finally going to see what's up with Superman being a prisoner on New Apocalypse. That should be heavy, like metal. And but I really want to take a second to talk about next week's Wonder Woman #760. Okay, 759 came out of the gate freaking hot last week. First issue by new writer Mariko Tamaki and artist Michael Janine. I think they are both doing, are potentially doing the best work of their career right now. This is hands down, no hyperbole, the best Wonder Woman I have read in probably 15 years. Since that original Greg Rucka run. Holy cow. I'm genuinely excited to get the next issue of Wonder Woman. It's going to be the first thing I read next week. So please, by all means, check that comic out, because it's a barn burner, and you're going to want to get in on this hype train before it leaves the station.
Some big 2 love right at the end.
The last minutes.
We made our way back around to it.
That's right. Maybe
Quota has been met. Quota has been met.
We are full service whores. So, with that in mind, that brings us to the end of our episode. We did run slightly long because we haven't done a normal show in forever. Maybe we rambled a little bit here and there, but it's all about comics. No big deal. Nothing too egregious, I hope. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back next week. We've also got a special episode coming up with our former teammate, Professor Cody White, is going to be interviewing author Stephen Grant. That's coming up next week. So watch for that as well. I also want to real quick give a shout out to Duna Holler, one of our teammates at Comic Watch, and who pulled off a really awesome interview that we put out a couple episodes ago now. Please check it out. It's very, very cool stuff. We're going to try to do a little bit more stuff like that, kind of a Comic Watch Presents type format, where some of our other people get a chance to show what they can do and bring some other voices and perspectives to the format. So we hope you enjoy it. We hope you enjoy everything we do. But with that, I'm Matt. This is Nick. That's Mike. Thank you so much for listening. Keep reading comics. Support your local comic shop. And until next time, be good to each other and read Bliss. All right. See you next time.